The rain-slick streets of Portland gleamed under the relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle, each drop a tiny hammer against Elena Vasquez's resolve. She gripped the steering wheel of her rented SUV, knuckles whitening, as the GPS voice droned on about turns she barely heard. 35 years old, fresh off a divorce that had gutted her like a storm-felled cedar, and here she was, fleeing Seattle's suffocating memories for this emerald city of hipsters and hidden heartaches. The man she'd loved for 12 years had traded their shared dreams for a younger model in a yoga studio, leaving Elena with a graphic design studio on life support and a heart stitched together with coffee stains and late-night sketches. She needed a house, not just walls and a roof, but something solid, something that whispered start over without screaming it. Pulling up to the address on her phone, she exhaled a shaky breath, the kind that fogged the window like a ghost sigh. Hawthorne Boulevard buzzed with the low hum of morning traffic, the scent of fresh-baked scones wafting from a nearby bakery, mingling with the earthy petrichor that always followed the rain. Elena smoothed her dark curls, still damp from the drive, and stepped out, her boots splashing in a puddle that mirrored the gray sky above. This was it, her first showing. One step toward reclaiming her life, or so the therapist back home had insisted, her voice as measured as a metronome. The door to the real estate office swung open before she could knock, and there stood Jordan Hale, all sharp edges and soft smiles, like a perfectly brewed espresso cutting through the fog. 32, with the kind of athletic grace that came from weekend hikes up Multnomah Falls, Jordan extended a hand that was warm and calloused in just the right places, the faint scent of pine soap clinging to her skin.
Elena? I'm Jordan.
Welcome to the hunt. Her voice was low, laced with that easy Oregon drawl, green eyes crinkling at the corners as if they already knew the weight Elena carried in her chest. Elena shook her hand, feeling an unexpected jolt, like static from a wool sweater on a dry day. Jordan was dressed in slim chinos and a fitted button-down that hugged her frame without apology, auburn hair cropped short and tousled, a silver necklace glinting against her collarbone, a simple chain with a tiny compass pendant, pointing north to who knew where. "Thanks for fitting me in so quick," Elena said, her Mexican-American accent softening the edges of her words. A remnant of her abuela's stories told over tamales in East Ella before life pulled her north. I need this to feel right. No rush, but no games either." Jordan nodded, locking the office door behind them with a click that echoed like a promise. "I get it. Portland's got a way of wrapping around you, showing you what you didn't know you were missing. Let's start with something cozy in Selwood, old craftsman, big windows for your sketches, yard for whatever dreams you've got brewing." She led Elena to a sleek black Jeep, the engine purring to life with a rumble that vibrated through the seats, and just like that, they were off, weaving through neighborhoods where maple leaves clung stubbornly to branches, reluctant to let go. The first house was a bust, too echoey, its empty rooms amplifying the hollow ache in Elena's gut. She wandered the kitchen, running fingers over scarred oak counters, imagining mornings here that didn't end in silence. Jordan watched from the doorway, arms crossed loosely, her presence a quiet anchor. "Not feeling it?" she asked, voice gentle like the rustle of pages in a well-loved book. Elena turned, catching her reflection in the window, tired eyes, full lips pressed into a line. "It's beautiful. Just cold. Like it's waiting for someone else." A sigh escaped her, heavy with the unsaid. "Like me, always waiting." The air smelled of dust and faint lemon polish, and outside, a crow cawed, sharp and mocking. Jordan stepped closer, not invading, but close enough that Elena caught the subtle spice of her cologne, something woodsy and warm. "That's okay. We keep looking. Tell me what home feels like to you, Elena. Not the Pinterest version, the real one." Her gaze held steady, probing without pressure, and for the first time in months, Elena didn't feel like she had to armor up. They drove in companionable quiet after that, the wipers swiping rhythmically, a soft jazz station murmuring Ella Fitzgerald's velvet tones. Elena found herself talking about the divorce, the way her ex's laughter used to fill their condo like sunlight, now just echoes. About her designs, bold lines and vibrant colors inspired by Frida Kahlo's unapologetic fire, how she'd poured her pain into logos for local breweries and queer-owned cafes. Jordan listened, really listened, her fingers drumming lightly on the wheel to the bass line, interjecting with questions that peeled back layers Elena had forgotten were there. By the third house, a charming bungalow in Alberta Arts District, the drizzle had eased into a fine mist, turning the world soft around the edges. The place smelled of aged pine and possibility, sunlight slanting through leaded glass windows onto hardwood floors worn smooth by generations. Elena paused in the living room, envisioning her drafting table by the fireplace, the crackle of logs on winter nights. This could work, she murmured, heart quickening not just from the space, but from the woman beside her, who was pointing out quirks with animated hands, hidden storage in the built-ins, a skylight perfect for stargazing. Jordan leaned against the mantel, sleeves rolled up to reveal toned forearms dusted with freckles. Yeah? Imagine holiday lights strung up here. The whole block smelling like cinnamon from that bakery down the street. Her smile was crooked, inviting, and when their eyes met, something shifted. A spark unspoken, hanging in the air like the scent of rain on hot asphalt. Elena swallowed, heat rising in her cheeks. She'd always dated men, safe and familiar. But this felt different, electric, like the first brush of charcoal on canvas. Jordan, why real estate? You seem like you could sell anything. Ideas, adventures. She busied her hands with a loose thread on her sweater, the wool soft against her skin. A low chuckle from Jordan, warm as hearth fire. Grew up in a tiny trailer in Bend, bouncing between my mom's shifts at the diner and my dad's fly fishing gigs. Houses were my escape. Flipping through magazines, dreaming of spaces that fit. Now I help folks build theirs. She paused, gaze softening. What about you? Designing worlds on paper. Must be magic when it clicks. They lingered longer than necessary, touring the attic with its slanted ceilings and dusty trunks, the air thick with the musty whisper of old letters. Elena's laughter bubbled up unexpectedly at Jordan's tale of a client who mistook a raccoon for the house ghost, the sound surprising her, light and free. As they descended the creaky stairs, Jordan's hand steadied her on a wobbly step, fingers lingering a beat too long, sending a shiver up Elena's arm that had nothing to do with the chill. Outside, the mist had cleared, revealing a sky bruised purple at the edges, the first stars pricking through. Offer on this one? Jordan asked, keys jingling softly in her pocket. Elena hesitated, the bungalow's warmth seeping into her bones. Maybe, but let's see more. I want to be sure. Of the house, she thought, or of this pull toward you. That night, alone in her Airbnb, a sterile loft with views of the Willamette River, Elena couldn't sleep. The city's hum filtered through the window. Distant horns, the lap of water against docks, a saxophone wailing from some unseen club. She scrolled through photos of the day's houses on her phone, but her thumb paused on one of Jordan, candid and grinning by the bungalow's rose arbor. How had that gotten there? Elena's pulse thrummed, a mix of curiosity and fear, like standing at the edge of a cliff with wind tugging at her coat. She texted her best friend back in Seattle, Mia, a no-nonsense barista with a tattooed sleeve of succulents. Hired a realtor today. She's intense. In a good way. The reply buzzed back almost instantly. Intense how? Spill chica. Portland's full of sapphic sirens. Don't ignore the vibe. Elena groaned, burying her face in the pillow that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. Sapphic? She'd flirted with the idea in college, a drunken kiss at a women's studies mixer, but life had barreled on with straight-laced boyfriends and wedding bells that never quite rang true. Now at 35, with her body softening around the edges from too many takeout tacos and not enough trail runs, she wondered if the map she'd followed had led her astray. The next morning dawned crisp, the sun slicing through her curtains like a promise. Elena dressed in her favorite Levi's and a vintage band tee, Nirvana, ironic for a Seattle exile, and met Jordan at a coffee shop in the Pearl District. The place was alive with the hiss of espresso machines and the murmur of freelancers tapping away on laptops, the air rich with roasted beans and cinnamon scones crumbling under forks. Jordan was already there, 2 lattes steaming on the table, her eyes lighting up as Elena approached. Saw you eyeing that compass, Elena said, sliding into the booth, the vinyl seat cool against her thighs. She nodded at the necklace, a safe deflection from the way Jordan's knee brushed hers under the table. Jordan touched it absently, the metal warm from her skin. "My dad's," he said. "It always points to what matters, even when you're lost." Her voice dipped, a shadow crossing her face, the kind that spoke of old wounds, perhaps a love that had veered off course. "Yours." Elena sipped her latte, foam clinging to her upper lip like a secret. "My abuela's ring," she said, twisting the gold band on her thumb, etched with tiny cacti. "She said it pricks you awake when you're sleepwalking through life." The words hung between them, heavy with shared vulnerability, and for a moment the cafe faded, the clink of mugs, the barista's call of orders, leaving only the steady thump of Elena's heart. They spent the day chasing properties. A mid-century modern in Laurelhurst with a deck overlooking manicured lawns, where birdsong filled the air like confetti. A fixer-upper in Montevilla, its backyard wild with blackberry brambles that snagged at their clothes, drawing laughs and accidental touches. Jordan moved with purpose, measuring tape snapping, flashlights piercing dusty corners, her enthusiasm infectious. Elena watched her, mesmerized by the way sunlight caught the red in her hair, the confident stride that said she'd map this city like her own veins. By afternoon, fatigue settled in, a bone-deep weariness from the emotional marathon. They paused at a park bench in Washington Park, the rose gardens blooming defiant against the chill, petals unfurling like whispered confessions. Elena leaned back, closing her eyes, the breeze carrying the faint sweetness of blooms and the distant trill of a flute busker. "You're good at this, Jordan. Making strangers feel like they belong." Jordan sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched, the wood of the bench creaking under their weight. "Not strangers. Just folks on the cusp." She paused, breath catching softly. "You don't strike me as on the cusp, Elena. More like mid-leap." Elena's eyes snapped open, meeting Jordan's, those green depths pulling her in like tide pools hiding stars. The air thickened, charged, and Elena's skin prickled with awareness, every nerve alive to the warmth radiating from Jordan's body. "What if the leap lands wrong?" she whispered, voice raw, the words tasting of fear and longing. Jordan's hand hovered near hers, then settled lightly on the bench between them, fingers inches away. "Then you learn to fly differently." The rose scent intensified as a gust swirled petals around their feet, and in that suspended moment, Elena felt the first crack in her carefully rebuilt walls, a fissure letting in light she hadn't dared name. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of amber and rose, they parted with plans for tomorrow's showings. Elena drove back to the Airbnb, windows down, the cool air whipping her hair, carrying snippets of indie folk from a passing food cart pod. Her phone buzzed. Mia again. "Update. Intense equals hot? Go for it. Life's too short for what ifs." Elena smiled, a tentative curve of lips, and for the first time, the what ifs felt less like anchors and more like wings. The following week blurred into a rhythm of open houses and stolen conversations, Portland unfolding like a well-worn novel under Jordan's guidance. Elena's offers fell through twice, once on a charming Victorian in Irvington, sunk by a leaky roof that wept like unspoken regrets. Another on a sleek condo in the South waterfront, too sterile, echoing her old life in glass and steel. Each disappointment chipped at her optimism, but Jordan was there, steady as the Columbia River's flow, turning setbacks into stories over post-showing beers at dive bars where neon signs buzzed like fireflies and jukeboxes spun tales of lost loves. One evening, after a swing and miss on a cozy A-frame in Forest Park, they ended up at Moon Room, a dimly lit spot in Old Town with velvet booths and walls papered in faded concert posters. The air hummed with the low thrum of a blues guitar from the corner stage, smoke from hookahs curling lazy tendrils toward the ceiling, mingling with the sharp tang of whiskey and the buttery warmth of fried plantains from the kitchen. Elena nursed a mezcal mule, the ginger bite cutting through her frustration, while Jordan swirled a bourbon neat, ice clinking like distant wind chimes. "You're cursed," Jordan teased, her foot nudging Elena's under the table, a playful bump that lingered. "Or blessed. Keeps you here longer." Her laugh was rich, head thrown back, exposing the elegant line of her throat, and Elena's gaze traced it unbidden, a flush creeping up her neck like ivy on brick. Elena set her glass down, condensation slick under her palm. Maybe I don't mind the curse. The word slipped out bolder than intended, fueled by the mezcal's fire and the way Jordan's eyes held hers unflinching, alive with questions. The music swelled, a slow grind of harmonica that pulled at something deep in Elena's chest, memories of college dances where bodies swayed close, boundaries blurring in the dark. Jordan leaned in, elbow on the scarred oak table, voice dropping to match the song's intimacy. Tell me about him. The ex. What broke it? No pity, just curiosity, sharp as the lime wedge Elena squeezed into her drink, juice stinging a paper cut she hadn't noticed. The question hung, heavy as the fog rolling off the river outside. Elena traced the rim of her glass, the cool edge grounding her. Carlos. We met at a design conference in San Francisco, him in marketing, me sketching logos on napkins. He was all charm, big plans, that easy laugh that made rooms brighter. She paused, the harmonica wailing a mournful bend. But somewhere along the way the plans shifted. He wanted kids, suburbs, the white picket script. I wanted this. She gestured vaguely, encompassing the bar's eclectic pulse, the city's queer undercurrent she'd only begun to sense. Travel, late nights creating, no clock ticking louder than my own heart. Last straw was him flirting with our neighbor, openly like it was casual. Said I was too intense, too much color in a black and white world. Jordan's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger in her eyes, quickly softened by empathy. She reached across, covering Elena's hand with her own warm, reassuring thumb, brushing a slow circle over knuckles. Sounds like he couldn't handle your palate. Portland's got room for all the shades. The touch sent sparks skittering up Elena's arm, settling low in her belly, a warmth she dismissed as fleeting before. Now it pooled, insistent, drawing her gaze to Jordan's lips, full and curved in a half-smile. The guitarist segued into a cover of At Last, Etta James' soul pouring from the speakers, and Elena felt exposed, raw, as if the song peeled back her skin. Your turn, she said, voice husky. That compass points to X's too? Jordan withdrew her hand slowly, regret shadowing her features, but she didn't pull away entirely. She took a sip of bourbon, the amber liquid catching the low light. Couple. First was in college, barista in Eugene, all tattoos and poetry slams. We burned bright, crashed harder. Second. Riley. Architect, built like she could blueprint the stars. 3 years, thought it was forever. But she wanted the city lights of New York, I wanted roots here. Last I heard, she's designing lofts for tech brothers. A wry twist to her mouth, but her eyes, God, those eyes, held a vulnerability that mirrored Elena's own, two women adrift in a sea of almosts. Elena nodded, the shared ache bridging the space between them. Roots. That's what I'm chasing. But what if they're tangled? The words tasted bittersweet like the dregs of her drink, and she wondered at the ease of it, unloading on this near stranger who felt anything but. Jordan's foot found hers again, deliberate this time. I anchor in the melody's swell. Then you untangle together. The implication hung electric, and as the song faded to applause, Elena's breath caught, the room's haze wrapping them in a cocoon of possibility. They left the bar late, the night air crisp with the promise of autumn, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle bones. Portland's streets were alive, street artists chalking murals on sidewalks, the distant pulse of a drum circle from the Saturday market. Jordan walked Elena to her SUV, parked crookedly under a sodium lamp that buzzed faintly, casting their shadows long and intertwined. Tomorrow's the one, Jordan said, leaning against the door, arms loose at her sides. A gem in Buckman exposed brick, artist loft vibes. You'll love it. Elena fumbled her keys, the metal jangling like nerves. Or hate it. With you showing it, who knows? A beat then softer. Thanks for tonight. For listening. Jordan stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to inches, her breath mingling with Elena's in the chill. Anytime. You're not just a client, Elena. You're. She trailed off, green eyes searching, the compass necklace rising with her quickened breath. Complicated. Elena supplied, heart-hammering the scent of Jordan's cologne, cedar and citrus, filling her lungs. Intriguing. Jordan's voice was a murmur, and for a heartbeat, Elena thought she might close the gap, taste the bourbon on her lips. But Jordan stepped back, hands in pockets, a gentlemanly retreat. Drive safe. Text me when you're home. Elena slid into the driver's seat, windows fogging from her exhale, watching Jordan's taillights fade into the night. Back at the Airbnb, she stripped down to tank and shorts, the cotton clinging to her skin, and paced the loft's exposed beams. The city lights twinkled beyond the glass, a constellation of lives intersecting, and Elena's mind replayed the evening, the brush of fingers, the weight of confessions, the almost kiss that hummed in her veins like a live wire. She pulled out her sketchpad, charcoal smudging her fingers as lines took shape. Jordan's profile against the bar's glow, eyes half-lidded, mouth parted in laughter. It wasn't just attraction, it was recognition, a mirror to the parts of herself she'd shelved, the bold strokes, the uncharted colors. By dawn the page was filled, Elena's hand cramped, sleep evading her like a skittish deer. The Buckman loft was everything Jordan promised. High ceilings with industrial pipes snaking like veins, walls of weathered brick that begged for canvases, a wall of windows framing the East Bank esplanade where joggers blurred in the morning haze. The air inside carried the faint must of history, undercut by fresh varnish from recent renos. Elena wandered the space barefoot, socks discarded by the door, the cool concrete kissing her soles as she imagined mornings here. Coffee brewing, sunlight pooling on the island counter. Jordan trailed her, tablet in hand, but her commentary was sparse today. Voice threaded with something unspoken. Kitchen's got that farmhouse sink you mentioned. And up here. She gestured to the lofted bedroom, a spiral staircase twisting up like DNA. Views for miles. Elena ascended, the metal steps groaning softly, and paused at the top, the city sprawling below like a living sketch. She turned, finding Jordan one step behind, close enough to feel the heat off her body. It's perfect, Elena breathed, the word laden with more than mortar and beams. Their eyes locked, the air thickening, charged with the unsaid. Jordan climbed the last step, now level, her hand finding the railing inches from Elena's. Yeah, feels like it fits. A pause, breath shallow. Like you. The admission cracked something open, and Elena moved first, tentative testing, her fingers grazing Jordan's jaw, rough with morning stubble she hadn't shaved. Jordan stilled, eyes darkening, then leaned in, lips brushing Elena's in a kiss that started soft, exploratory, like the first rain of season. Elena's world tilted, hands fisting in Jordan's shirt, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened, hungry, tongues tasting of last night's lingering spirits and new awakenings. Jordan's arms wrapped around her waist, strong and sure, pressing Elena back against the railing, the metal cool through her blouse. A gasp escaped Elena, muffled against Jordan's mouth, her body arching instinctively, every nerve igniting. The city hummed below, oblivious, but up here it was just them, the rustle of fabric, the soft hitch of breaths, the way Jordan's fingers threaded through Elena's curls, tugging gently, eliciting a moan that vibrated between them. It was messy, real, lips swollen and breaths ragged when they broke apart. Foreheads pressed together, hearts pounding in sync. God, Elena whispered, voice wrecked, a laugh bubbling up through the days. That was overdue, Jordan supplied, thumb tracing Elena's lower lip, swollen and sensitive. Her eyes were soft, searching for regret, finding none. They descended eventually, hands linked, the loft now humming with potential beyond walls. But as they signed the preliminary papers in the sun-dappled kitchen, Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Carlos out of the blue. Heard your house hunting. Miss you. Coffee. The words landed like ice water, dousing the warmth, dredging up old loyalties, the safety of familiar paths. Jordan noticed the shift, her hand stilling on Elena's back. Everything okay? Elena pocketed the phone, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Yeah, just ghosts. But inside doubt stirred. A whirlwind threatening the fragile bloom between them. That night Elena lay awake, the loft's echo mocking her turmoil. The kiss replayed in sensory fragments. Jordan's taste, salt and smoke, the press of her body firm and yielding, the way her name sighed from Elena's lips like a prayer. Yet Carlos's text lingered. A tether to the woman she'd been, straight-edged and certain. Was this leap into Jordan's arms a rebellion or revelation? The Willamette whispered against the pilings below. Relentless, and Elena tossed, sheets tangling like her thoughts, until exhaustion claimed her in fitful dreams of compasses spinning wild. Weeks melted into a haze of paperwork and stolen moments. The Buckman loft transforming from echo chamber to Elena's sanctuary under Jordan's watchful eye. Movers hauled in boxes stamped with Seattle labels, sketchpads yellowed at edges, Abuela's cast-iron comal for weekend tortillas, a collection of vinyls from her punk phase that scratched with memories. Jordan pitched in, sleeves rolled high, sweat beading on her brow as she hefted a drafting table up the spiral stairs, muscles flexing under the strain. Heavy as your heart was back then, she quipped, setting it down with a thud that vibrated through the floorboards, her grin boyish and disarming. Elena laughed, wiping dust from a shelf, the air thick with the cardboard tang and faint varnish. Lighter now. Thanks to you. She meant it. The loft felt alive, windows flung open to the breeze carrying grill smoke from rooftop barbecues, the distant honk of ferries on the river like a lover's call. Their kisses had evolved from tentative sparks to slow burns, shared in quiet corners. A brush in the hardware store aisle amid paint swatches in sunset hues. A deeper press against the truck's tailgate after a furniture run, Jordan's hands framing Elena's face, thumbs stroking cheeks flushed with more than exertion. But Carlos's shadow loomed, his texts escalating from casual check-ins to pleas laced with nostalgia. Remember our road trip to Big Sur? Waves crashing, you sketching the cliffs. We were unstoppable. Elena deleted most, but one evening as thunder rumbled over the Cascades, she replied, polite, distant, agreeing to coffee at a neutral spot in Vancouver, just across the bridge, to close the chapter. Guilt gnawed at her, sharp as the storm's first rain lashing the windows, because Jordan deserved transparency, not this clandestine knot in her gut. She confessed over takeout that night. Pad Thai from a cart in the food district, steam rising in fragrant curls as they sat cross-legged on the loft's new rug. A wool weave in terracotta and indigo that Jordan had picked for its desert soul vibe. The rain pattered steadily, a white noise veil, and Elena's words tumbled out, chopsticks hovering midair. It's nothing romantic. Just closure. He flew out last week, said he regretted everything. Her voice cracked on the last vulnerability raw, the spicy lime dressing suddenly too sharp on her tongue. Jordan set her carton aside, expression unreadable in the lamplight's glow, shadows dancing across her features like unspoken fears. She drew her knees up, arms wrapping loosely around them, the compass necklace catching the light. Closure's good. Clean cuts heal faster. But her tone was measured, a touch too even, and when she met Elena's eyes, there was a guarded flicker, the echo of her own past fractures. Just be careful. Exes have a way of rewriting history. Elena reached for her, fingers intertwining, the calluses on Jordan's palms a map of hikes and heartaches. I will. This us, it's real. New. She leaned in, capturing Jordan's mouth in a kiss that tasted of basil and reassurance, slow and deepening until the thunder rolled closer, vibrating the glass. Jordan responded, hands cupping Elena's neck, pulling her onto her lap, the rug's fibers prickling through denim. They moved together, unhurried, breath syncing with the storm's rhythm. Elena's shirt peeled away, revealing the soft curve of her belly, Jordan's lips trailing fire down her collarbone, eliciting gasps that mingled with the rain's roar. Later, tangled in sheets that smelled of them, sweat and sandalwood, Elena's head on Jordan's chest, listening to the steady thump beneath her ear, she whispered, "Stay tonight." The loft creaked around them, settling like a sigh, and Jordan's fingers traced lazy patterns on her back, spelling out safety in invisible ink. "Try and make me leave," Jordan murmured, voice gravelly with sated emotion, and they drifted off to the storm's lullaby, bodies fitting like puzzle pieces long separated. The coffee meet with Carlos unfolded the next afternoon in a strip mall cafe on the Washington side. All formica counters and the percolators gurgle. The air heavy with burnt beans and regret. He looked older, lines etched deeper around eyes that once sparkled for her alone. His button-down rumpled as if the flight had unraveled him. "Elena," he said, standing to hug her, the embrace stiff, his cologne, that same ocean brine scent, stirring a pang of what was. They sat by the window, rain-streaked panes blurring the parking lot, and he launched in, words tumbling like loose gravel. "I was an idiot. Therapy's kicking my ass, but it's clear now you were the color in my gray. Come back. We can fix it." His hand covered hers on the table, earnest, the calluses from his guitar strings a ghost of late-night serenades. Elena withdrew gently, the vinyl booth squeaking, her heart a storm-tossed sea. "Carlos, that life's closed. I'm building something here, me first." She spoke of the loft, her designs blooming for Portland clients, the city's pulse syncing with her own. But as he pressed, voice rising with desperation, "What about us? 12 years, Elena." Doubt crept in, a whisper of security over the wild unknown of Jordan's touch. She left with a hug that felt final, his "I love you," echoing hollow as she crossed the bridge back, the Columbia churning below like her thoughts. Vancouver's outskirts gave way to Portland's bridges, steel girders humming under tires, and Elena blasted the radio, Janis Joplin's wail cutting through. "Piece of my heart," an anthem to her fractured loyalties. Jordan was waiting at the loft, paint rollers in hand, turning the bedroom wall a deep sage that evoked Oregon forests. She looked up from her ladder, smudges on her cheek, smile fading at Elena's expression. "Rough." Elena dropped her keys on the counter, the clatter loud in the quiet space. "He wants me back. Says it's fixable." The words landed heavy and she watched Jordan's face, the subtle tightening of jaw, the way her grip whitened on the roller handle, paint dripping slow as tears onto drop cloths. Jordan descended, wiping hands on a rag that smelled of turpentine, sharp and chemical. "And you?" Simple question, loaded as a thunderclap, her green eyes steady but shadowed, the compass at her throat still as if directionless. Elena crossed to her, hands framing Jordan's face, thumbs smearing the paint smudge into a soft streak. "I said no, but it stirred things up. Made me realize how deep this runs." She kissed her then, fierce, pouring certainty into the press of lips, tongues tangling with urgency. Jordan responded in kind, hands gripping Elena's hips, lifting her onto the counter, the edge biting into thighs as clothes shed in a frenzy, blouse unbuttoned with trembling fingers, jeans kicked aside to pool on the floor. They made love there, raw and reclaiming, Jordan's mouth mapping Elena's body like uncharted land. Nips at collarbone, tongue circling peaks that drew moans echoing off brick. Elena arched, nails raking Jordan's back, the sage wall blurring as release built, crashing over them in waves that left them gasping, slick and spent, foreheads pressed in the afterglow. "You're my home," Elena whispered, voice breaking, and Jordan's arms tightened, a vow in the hold. But the peace fractured days later, a client emergency pulling Jordan to Bend for a weekend closing, family land sale, her mom's diner calling with tales of grease and gossip. "Back Sunday," she promised, kissing Elena at the door, the morning light slanting through windows like golden bars. "Miss me?" "Like air," Elena replied, but as Jordan's Jeep vanished down the street, anxiety bloomed, fed by Carlos's final text. "One dinner. For old times. No pressure." She ignored it, diving into work. A logo for a queer bookstore in Hawthorne, swirling fonts evoking hidden shelves and whispered secrets. The loft filled with her hums, charcoal dust on fingers, but evenings stretched long, the bed too vast without Jordan's sprawl. Saturday night, the dinner temptation won. Not for rekindling, she told herself, but clarity. Carlos chose a bistro in the Pearl, candlelit tables and jazz trio crooning standards, the air rich with seared scallops and red wine's berry depth. He was polished, charming, regaling her with conference anecdotes, his foot nudging hers under the table like old habit. "See? We fit," he said, toasting with a clink that rang false. Elena's laugh was tight, the violin's wail underscoring her unease. Different fit now. But as dessert arrived, chocolate torte decadent and dark, His hand found her knee, sliding up with intent, and panic surged, hot and clarifying. She pulled away, chair scraping, voice steady despite the tremor. "Stop. This isn't us anymore." Outside, the night air slapped her, cool and cleansing, rain threatening in the cloud's underbelly. She walked, blocks blurring, until her phone summoned an Uber, but not before tears came, hot tracks down cheeks, mixing with the first spits of rain. Back in the loft, soaked and shaking, she curled on the couch, the space echoing with absence, Jordan's flannel draped over the arm like a ghost. Sunday dawned gray, Jordan's return delayed by a mudslide on the highway. Texts apologetic. "Stuck in, sisters. Love you." The words, first time spoken, warmed Elena, but guilt festered, a bruise under skin. When Jordan finally arrived, mud-splattered and weary, Elena met her at the door with a hug that bordered desperate, but the confession stuck, thorny in her throat. They cooked that night, Jordan's chili, bubbling with cumin and heat, the kitchen alive with sizzle and chop of onions releasing their eye-sting sharpness. Over bowls steaming on the island, Elena spilled it, voice small against the spoon's clink. "Dinner with Carlos. Nothing happened, but felt wrong. Like betraying this." Jordan's spoon paused, chili untouched, her face a mask cracking at edges. "Why go at all?" Hurt laced the words, raw as the storm-battered road she traversed. She stood, pacing to the window, city lights reflecting in her eyes like distant fires. "I get exes. Hell, I've got my share. But secrets? That cuts." Elena rose, approaching slow, hands hovering before settling on Jordan's shoulders, tense under her touch. "No secrets now. I was scared of how fast this feels, how right? But you're it, Jordan. The compass point." She turned her, cupping her face, willing the truth through her gaze. Jordan searched her eyes, breath ragged, then pulled her close, kiss bruising with forgiveness and fear. "Don't scare me like that," she murmured against Elena's temple, hands fisting in hair. They retreated to the bedroom, shedding layers like old skins, bodies entwining with a tenderness edged in urgency. Slow strokes, whispers of names, the rain resuming its tattoo on the roof as climax built, shared and shattering, leaving them whispered vows in the dark. Yet the fracture lingered, a hairline crack, as Monday brought Jordan's big pitch. A high-end listing in the West Hills, sprawling estate with views to the gorge. Elena tagged along for moral support. The drive winding through Douglas firs heavy with mist, the air pine-scented and crisp. The house was opulent, marble counters veined like lightning, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves groaning under tomes. But as Jordan worked the room, charming the cellar with easy charisma, Elena wandered the gardens, fog cloaking the horizon, doubt whispering. "Can this last? Or am I just another flip?" The crack widened imperceptibly over the next month, subtle as the autumn creep of gold into the maples lining their street. Elena's studio thrived, commissions pouring in for murals at queer youth centers, her bold lines capturing Portland's mosaic soul. But nights brought restlessness, dreams tangled with Carlos's laugh and Jordan's sighs, waking her with a jolt, sheets damp and heart racing. Jordan, ever the fixer, suggested a getaway. A cabin in the Coast Range, where ferns carpeted the forest floor and the ocean roared distant anthems. They drove out on a Friday, the Jeep's tires crunching gravel up a rutted road, salt air sneaking through cracked windows, mingling with the leather seats' creak. The cabin was rustic charm, log walls scarred by time, a stone hearth crackling with Jordan's quick-stacked pine, the scent of sap bursting in the flames. They unpacked with laughter, Elena's playlist of Chicano soul filling the space, Linda Ronstadt's velvet ache over the waves crash audible through thin panes. That first night, they hiked to a bluff, twilight bleeding purple into the sea, gulls wheeling on thermals with cries sharp as warnings. Jordan spread a blanket, unpacking a thermos of spike cider, steam rising sweet and spiced. They sat shoulder to shoulder, legs tangled, the horizon swallowing the sun in a blaze that painted Jordan's profile in firelight. "This," Jordan said, handing Elena a mug, ceramic warm in chilled fingers, "is what roots feel like." Elena sipped, the burn grounding her, waves below foaming white against basalt. No exes, no listings. Just us. But even as she said it, Carlos's latest email nod, job offer in Seattle, For us to start fresh, ignored but festering like damp wood. She leaned into Jordan head on shoulder, inhaling the salt-tinged skin, and they kissed there, slow and deepening, hands roaming under layers, the blanket twisting as urgency built. Jordan's fingers unbuttoned Elena's coat, tracing ribs, eliciting shivers that had little to do with the wind, her mouth following paths south until Elena gasped, back arching against wool, release cresting with the tide's roar. They made love by firelight later, shadows dancing on logs like lovers' secrets, bodies slick and sure, Elena atop, hips rolling in rhythm to the heart's pop and hiss. Jordan's hands gripped her thighs, green eyes locked, whispering stay with me like a mantra, and Elena shattered, tears pricking. Not sorrow but the overwhelming rightness, a homecoming in flesh and breath. Back in Portland the idol frayed. Jordan landed the West Hills sail, champagne popped in the loft with friends. A boisterous crew from her hiking group, rainbow pins glinting on packs, laughter echoing off brick as they grilled elk burgers on the deck, smoke curling lazy into the night. Elena mingled but anxiety simmered, Carlos's persistence escalating to voicemails. I'm coming down. We need to talk face to face. She deleted them, but the loft felt besieged, its warmth turning claustrophobic. The confrontation came midweek, Jordan at an early showing, Elena sketching at the island, charcoal snapping under pressure. The buzzer sounded insistent and there was Carlos, disheveled from the drive, eyes wild with determination, rain dripping from his coat onto the welcome mat. Elena, please. Hear me out. She let him in against every instinct, the door clicking shut like a trap. He paced the living room, words spilling. Apologies woven with promises, a ring box in his pocket glimpsed like a grenade. I get it now, your art, your fire. I'll move here, support it all. His voice cracked, pleading, the rain outside a frantic drum. Elena's heart twisted, old affections surfacing like drowned roots, but she saw it clear, the cage of compromise, the dimming of her colors. No, Carlos. I love someone else. The words escaped, true and terrifying, hanging in the air thick as the storm's humidity. He deflated, shoulders slumping, but anger flashed. Her? The realtor? Some rebound fling. His voice rising, echoing off windows until the door flew open. Jordan home early, face thunderous, keys jangling like accusations. Get out. Jordan's tone was steel, stepping between them, body taut as a bowstring. Carlos retreated, muttering curses, the door slamming behind him, rain swallowing his footsteps. Silence crashed in, heavier than the thunder rolling east. Jordan turned, eyes blazing, not at Elena but through her, hurt raw as an open wound. You let him in here? Our home. Her voice broke, compass swinging wild with her gestures. After everything, the cabin, the promises, what are we, Elena? Practice for the real thing. Elena stepped forward, hands outstretched, voice trembling. No. God no. He's gone. For good. Tears welled, hot and unbidden, spilling as she closed the gap, clutching Jordan's shirt, the fabric damp from the dash inside. You're the real thing. The only. Jordan's resolve crumbled, arms enveloping her, but the embrace was fierce, edged with sobs they shared, bodies rocking in the kitchen's chill, rain lashing pains like judgment. I can't lose this, Jordan whispered, face buried in Elena's curls, breath hitching. You. They sank to the floor, backs against cabinets, holding tight as the storm peaked, lightning fracturing the dark. Elena confessed it all, the doubts, the fears, the love that had bloomed fierce and uncharted. Jordan listened, fingers tracing Elena's spine, her own admission surfacing, the terror of roots after Riley's flight, the way Elena had planted seeds she'd thought barren. Dawn broke clear, the loft washed in silver light, rain's patter fading to drip. They rose, brewed coffee strong and black, mugs clinking in tentative toast. Jordan pulled a key from her pocket, brass, etched with the loft's address, sliding it onto Elena's chain beside Abuela's ring. Stay. Not as client, not as fling. As mine. Elena fastened it, the weight settling like certainty, and kissed her, soft and sealing, the city awakening below in honks and hums. Always. Months later, the loft hosted their quiet union. A backyard ceremony under string lights. Friends toasting with ciders from local orchards. Mia officiating with vows laced in humor and heart. Elena, in a flowing linen dress embroidered with cacti blooms, stood beside Jordan in chinos and vest, compass gleaming. They exchanged rings, simple bands of reclaimed gold, and as the sun dipped, painting the roses gold, Elena whispered, "Found my north." Jordan's grin was radiant, hands squeezing. "Told you. Hearts always point home." In the years that followed, the loft expanded. Not in square feet but in life. Elena's murals gracing city walls, Jordan's agency blooming with queer-led flips, their love a steady hearth through Portland's rains and rare suns. They hiked the gorge, sketched by campfires, built a family not of blood but chosen. Foster kids with stories as layered as the city's fog. And in quiet mornings, coffee steaming, fingers laced, Elena knew. The best homes weren't bought but built. One kiss, one confession, one leap at a time.